What is up, YouTube? All right, so this is the perfect HD Fractal 75 build. Okay, this build is flawless. Makes for a very easy mounting solution for your HD VTX, whether it's Walksnail or HD0 or whatever's going to come out in the future. That is a 25.5 by 25.5 form factor. So let's get into it. Alright, so I'm going to start off by showing you exactly what you're going to need to do this. Obviously, you're going to need this Fractal frame. This is the 75. Okay, this will work with the 75 or the 65 millimeter frame. Alright, you're going to need one of these pipe files, which is 2 millimeter in diameter. A lot of people that build micros will have a few of these laying around because they come with a lot of frames nowadays. So this is important because we have to ream out the mounting points for the flight controller and the VTX. Obviously, you're going to need your flight controller, and you're going to need your Walksnail or HD0 VTX. And what you're going to have to get is the nylon M2 standoffs. I'll have a link in the video description. Okay, and you will have to 3D print this custom mount for the camera, which I created in tinkercad. It's available in tinkercad and Thingiverse. I'll leave a link in the video description. And also, preferably if you have nylon M2 screws. If not, then the aluminum or stainless steel is just fine. It's just going to add a little bit more weight. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our reamer and we're going to just spin this, just wedge this in like this, and you're going to ream this out until, and this is going to be your 4 mounting points because they're very small. They're meant for the small little M1 screws. So you're just going to ream these out until they're wide enough where you could fit the M2 screws into the holes. Mine are done already. I just gave you a little demonstration so you can see how to do it. And these screws are going to come through the bottom. So once they're all reamed out, all 4, pause the video till you're at this point. They slide through the bottom like that. All right, if you guys are curious, these are pillars. I have this magnetic plate that I put on my desk. That way anything magnetic can stick to it. So these pillars, I'll give you a link in the video description. You get them on Amazon. Awesome, because it allows you to mount your frames when you work on them. So my desk is pretty optimized for drone building. So you put it on the front one first. This just makes it easier for mounting your flight controller. So once your grommet is on there like that, take your flight controller, put the pigtail through or around the back mount. Okay, and as you see, I'm using the ceramic ELRS antenna, so this works with the ELRS ceramic antennas or just a regular wired antenna. Once you have one in like that, then what I do is put the grommets in place and then just slide the screws through like that. Okay, once you have 2 in, the easiest thing to do, the easiest way to do this is take one of your nylon standoff screws now and just screw it on, just so the screws don't fall out, and it makes it a lot easier to work with. So now, as you see, I have these on. I don't have to hold it in place anymore. So you know, the screws are held in on the bottom, and then the other 2, it makes it a lot easier to put the next 2 on. So then same way, you just put your rubber grommets in place, 1 and 2, and you do the same thing with the 3rd and 4th screw. Just slide them in. Okay, it's 1. Here's my 4th one. Put that in. Back. 2. Okay. And then you screw these in place. Okay. So now, before we go any further, we have to do the wiring. There's not much wiring to do, obviously, because unless you had to solder on your pigtail, depending on which flight controller you got. Mine is done already. But this is something that I wish I would have knew when I first built this with the 1S boards. Experienced builders will know this without me telling them. And I admittedly did not know, because this is my first 1S VTX that I ever used. And that is that this VTX is rated for 3.1 to 5 volts. So what happens is, if you go to the BEC, which is the 5 volt pad on whichever flight controller you're using, on punch outs, the voltage sag is going to cause your VTX to cut out. So you're gonna lose video. I mean, I tried 2 different flight controllers. I had that issue on both of them. So this is actually an iFlight Blitz flight controller, which had the mounted VTX for analog on here. I took it off. I showed that in the previous video I did. I'm not going to show that again, obviously, because it's done. But whatever the case may be, when you solder up this Walksnail VTX, you have to solder the power and the ground directly to the pigtail, so you don't have any cutout on video from voltage sag. So I'm going to do that right now first, so you guys see exactly what we're talking about. Okay, so I'm using Walksnail. This build works with Walksnail or HD0, as the VTXs are the same wiring and the same footprint, which is 25.5 mounting points. So no need for all that. Okay, so this is the VTX. Okay, it comes with a pigtail. I mean, Molex connector. We're not going to use that. I'm going to cut that off. And comes with the wire, comes with the antenna. This isn't an unboxing video, so I'm not going to go crazy showing you everything that's in the box. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off this connector, because we don't need it. Okay, so we'll get rid of that. Okay, the gray wire is TX off of the VTX, and the white wire is RX, so you reverse them. So the gray wire will go to the RX pad on your flight controller, and the white to the TX, and obviously power and ground are the same. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just tin these wires and prep them. Okay, now that that's done, good practice to cover your electronics when you're soldering over them, just to avoid any little pieces of solder going inside, in between anything. You ruin your VTX before you even get a chance to use it. Okay. Okay, that's done. All right, so the first thing we're going to solder up is the power and the ground. So on my flight controller, like I said, we're going straight to the pigtail. So this is where the pigtails connect, right here. This is positive, negative, so red and black. So that'll be the first thing that we do. It helps to have these helping hands. I'll leave a link in the video description for these too. Everything mounts to my metal board, so I can move everything around. It makes for very easy building, and especially I like to post build videos, so it makes it for a lot simpler and less complex build on camera, if that makes sense. So we're gonna flip this way. Okay, that's pretty good. I'll just slide it in position for you guys. Okay, very good. So like I said, this is positive in the back, this is negative in the front. So we'll start off with the positive. All right. Get the solder out of the way. You know what, let me shorten that just a touch. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Okay, that's positive and negative, obviously same exact way. And that'll do it. All right, so that's on there. It looks good. I don't see any bridging, so that looks good. So at this point, in my case, the UART, the second UART is on the bottom. So I'm going to flip it over. Okay. And we're going to do the same thing. So like I said, gray is TX off of the VTX. So it goes to RX on the flight controller. So the gray is going to RX. It's going to be the same for you guys, no matter what flight controller you're using. The gray is going to go to the RX pad on your flight controller. Okay. And you'll see how this stand really comes in handy that I'm using right now. See that? Because now I got this underneath. It makes really easy mounting. Really easy to work on these drones when you have help, you have the right stuff, if that makes any sense to you guys. So, and that's it. So we're wired up already. So this is a quick build video, as you see. First thing we're going to do is we're going to connect the antenna. Just take the extra wire and put it underneath between the two boards. So that's what you want, somewhere in that orientation right there. So now I already snipped. When you get these standoffs, they come a little bit longer, the screws, but they're nylon, so you just cut them. Once you screw on your hex nuts, you just cut them at the length of the nut. So at this point you can mount it. So you just take your little nylon screws, okay. So as you see, the nice thing about doing it this way is number one, you have room for your ceramic antenna if you have one of the ceramic antenna ELRS integrated boards, so it doesn't get crushed. And the most important thing to me is you have plenty of room for ventilation, which is why I think I burnt out my first VTX to begin with. I think that between the heat of the flight controller, and then this thing puts out a tremendous amount of heat, this VTX, especially because there's no heat sink on there, I think that it overheated and it just over time burnt out. I put about 120, 150 packs through it before it burnt out, but it did burn out, so that's something worth noting. But I don't know if it was just you know, from abuse or if it was from heat, but either way, here we are, and that's why I'm making this video again. But I didn't have it mounted like this the first time. I actually spent some time working on this before I got the new one, just to figure out the best way to mount it so I could post a video on it, which is why I'm here right now. All right, but what's good about it is all the wires are nice and free underneath. You can mount the camera freely, and there's no binding, and you should get a nice, decent, adequate amount of airflow underneath for your VTX to cool off. So now that that's done, what we're gonna do is just cinch down these bottom screws. You don't want to crush the board. You don't want these grommets to be crushed, but you do want them to be secure. So at first we hand tightened them. Now we could tighten them to cinch down the board and lock them between the pockets inside the grommets like that. Okay, and once that's done, all right, now your flight control is nice and stable in there. And if you're going to use a tool to tighten the hexes on top, just be very careful you don't pop off any resistors or transistors or anything else that's on top of the board. I like to just tighten them by hand. Since it's nylon, you really don't have to worry about them unscrewing on you from vibration like you do with metal. But that's it. So once that's all installed, that's the heart of the electronics. It's all done. And we're ready for the 3D mounts now. Okay, so I printed a bunch of these just because if you print them thin, they break if you know, heavy crashes, but 0.6 millimeters is more than enough. And the way these are designed, as I mentioned in the beginning, is you'll notice it's different than a stock where there's a stem going through the front camera sleeve where the camera mounts. And the reason why is because this is reversed. So on the stock mount, the way it goes is you pull it through the front, and then the tab wraps around the camera, the back of the camera, and tucks in this way. This is reversed, which is why I named it that way. This goes in this fashion. What we do is we put this little tiny tab goes through the back of the furthest slot. I'm gonna lift this up so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So what you do is you bring it in like this, okay? And then the tab goes through the back slot like this. So from the bottom of the quad, you slide the tab through the back slot like that, okay? And now once that's through, okay, it's gonna be sitting like this, all right? So now the next step is you take the camera itself and you put the camera all the way through like this from the back, okay? So you want it to be where the camera is sitting in front of the strap. You want the strap to be in the back like this, okay? Now once it's in the back like that, what we do is we're gonna braid. So you're gonna take this and you're gonna cross the strap. That's what's gonna hold your cable in place, and you're gonna have a little loop in the front. And then what you do is you take the camera and you stick it through the loop, the lens. So the lens is going to come like this, and the lens wraps over, and then you're gonna have the cross going over the top of the lens just like that. And what that's gonna do is it holds the cable in the back without interrupting, without shifting the cable left or right. And then you just take the front tab and you send it right through the front instead of the back like the stock one. So you send it through like this, and then you just tighten it, okay? This one is extra thin because it's a lot easier to pull through, and I figured that it would be easier to make the video. But when it's done, as you'll see, the cable now sits between the two straps where it's crossed on top. You see the cross is right on top, and the camera sits in between, the cable sits in between, and that makes the camera sit center. So with the stock strap, the tab comes straight down the middle, and the camera shifts either left or right depending, and it doesn't mount as clean. So this is why I created this strap. That was to, you know, accommodate this MIPI cable that is in the center of the camera. All right, so that's how you do it as far as that goes. And then obviously once this is through, you can cut off the excess tab just like on the original. I leave a little bit on there because it kind of helps lock the battery in place. But you could also do the same in the back of the camera. If you want to cut off this extra tab here, you can. Okay, I don't, because what I do is I put one of those rubber grommets. I'll show you in a second once I get this lined up. Okay, so now once this is in the back like this, what I do is I take one of those little rubber spacers, one of these guys, and I slide it on here, and it acts as a bumper. And the reason why I do that is because if you crash head on, I don't want the circuit board. So if you see, I kind of just slide it down here like that, and this holds it in place. But it acts as basically like a bumper, kind of like a buoy bumper on a boat. Same thing. It kind of just prevents the impact of the camera with the flight controller. So I like it. Works for me. You don't have to do that. It's going to add a little bit of weight. every little drop of weight obviously counts with these guys. So, and that's pretty much it. That's the whole mount right there. So the antenna, once the hoops are on, ducts is held in place between the ducts. I'll install them right now, and then we'll weigh this thing in. I'm gonna speed the video up a little bit because this is something that takes a little time, and you guys know how to mount motors. Okay, this is worth pointing out. So what I do is I cut the duct. You cut it once it's on the quad, and the reason why I do that is because when you mount these, okay, you'll see the wire gets compressed from the duct, and the vibration, I was afraid it was going to slice the wire over time, and the propeller is far away from this to begin with, so it's not a concern of mine. So that's why I did that. Okay, the fourth hoop, so they're going to be reversed from each other. Also, I cut out the section where your micro USB or whatever you want to call it, that proprietary connector for your data plugs in. Otherwise, you'd have to take off a hoop every single time you want to access your memory card to update or to download videos from your memory. So I cut a hole in that. Okay, so there you have it. That's the whole build. So once you center this camera, right now this is loose, so it won't be as loose for you because I used an extra thin mount, and because I did, it pops right out as you see, but the prints that are available on Thingiverse won't pop out like that. This is just for the sake of making a video faster. I use these super thin mounts, so you get the idea. But that's the finished product. So set your continuity tester to tester, so you make noise if you positive and negative touch. All right, then this is how you check to make sure your quad's not going to explode. Positive to positive, negative to negative. Easiest way to do this, in my opinion. Hold it like chopsticks, almost about to get together. And you're going to get a little tip at first because the capacitors inside the board hold a slight charge. But holding them together, touching both leads, I have no tone, which means that there's no short, which means we're ready to plug in. So this build is successful. All up weight. Well, this is not all up weight. Let me get a battery. Okay, with my batteries, which are the better FPV 300 milliamp hour BT 2.0s, all up weight is going to be 38 grams. Wait, let me take this camera cover off. 38 grams on the nose. Without the battery, we're at 29.7 grams. So we're under 30 grams, which is pretty average for these. So it's not terrible the way it is, but you'd probably be at 28 grams or so with the nylon screws, and with lighter ducts, you probably get even lower than that. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Any questions, feel free to just send me a question in the comments. It's not a problem. I'll answer you as soon as I see them. And I check them pretty regularly. I get the alerts on my phone. So any questions, feel free to ask. And I hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon.